What up? This is the Sam and Dan Show. WXJM Harrisonburg.
All right. How's it going? The Valley. How's everybody doing? Yeah, 88.7 on your FM dial. Also streaming live from WXJM.org.
Wixgym.com.
Yeah.
Oh, org, actually.
For those who know, actually, I'm not sure. Maybe you could enter either one.
Yeah.
I've never tried that.
Neither have I.
Because, I have perfect memory, so I always get it right first try.
And also, it's just automatically loaded up on our computers at all times. Mm-hmm. So really, we never have to type it in.
The database is always here. It's always running.
Mm-hmm. It's the only thing running. Right.
Speaking of running,
yeah.
I went for a run this morning, and, it's just really nice out. I'm glad that we're getting ready for spring break.
Yeah, I got to say I'm relieved.
We got a good spring break coming up. It's good to get some dust out of the joints. And, things are looking nice.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel a little stiff, from all this work.
Right. Speaking of stiff, today's topic is mummies.
At the stiffest beings in town, folks.
Right. Legendary for being pretty immobile
for
the most part and not moving a lot.
Yet having a high spook factor. For their lack of mobility, they're able to do a lot of spooking.
Right, exactly. And that's what makes mummies so great.
Mm-hmm.
They're so passive and yet so pervasive in culture.
Oh, absolutely.
And, everyone knows mummies from ancient Egyptian studies, a class that we all took back in elementary school, I believe.
Required to, yeah.
Right. And, when you're learning about the pyramids, King Tut, arguably the most famous mummy.
Mm-hmm. Legendary.
And it's just good stuff. And it's really interesting. So, listeners, we wanted to share that with you on the Sam and Dan Show this week.
A little bit of our mummy research. Not only are we going to talk about historical mummies, and, of course, if you're talking about mummies, you're going to have to dive into the curses that come along with them.
Right. That's the real juicy part of the mummies, because the rest is all dried up dust and bones.
Yeah. There are some that, we can't prove don't get up and walk around. But,
Night at the museum?
Yeah, a la Night at the Museum. That's exactly what I was thinking. But for the most part, the curses are really, really what's going to be hitting you and spooking you. And really...
And those are what we're going to focus on, because it's really, really hard to tell. Like, where's the curse begin and where does real life bad luck end?
Mm-hmm.
Or the other way around.
Yeah.
But, what is a curse, Dan, to you? What's it mean to be cursed?
Well, I would say a curse, it goes beyond being unlucky. You could go to 7-Eleven, you pick up a couple scratchers, and you could lose 2 or 3 of them. You might win maybe $10 back, and that's enough to buy another scratcher. But that's just an example of bad luck. That's not really a curse. A curse is like you walk out of
and every single scratcher you've ever bought, you lose.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna go and say you walk out of your house and you get hit by a car. You're probably cursed.
But how do you know it's not just bad luck? I get hit by cars almost all the time.
Yeah.
Probably because I don't look both ways before crossing the street. It wastes time.
Well, yeah,
really.
That's amateur hour stuff.
And usually the impact propels me to the other side with only minor injuries.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm banking on usually. But I wouldn't say I'm cursed. I'd say I'm a pretty fortunate guy.
As we all are.
You know how some people claim that there's a rain cloud following them around?
Yeah.
I have the opposite of rain cloud. I've got
sunshine cloud.
Yes. Like pure sunflakes baking my skin. You could say I'm sunburnt with good fortune.
He is.
Constantly.
Not in the the gross, red skin flaky type way sunburnt. If you look at him right now, he's got a bronze sheen to him. It's truly beautiful.
Like we're talking like Greek god level here.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
If you ever seen a statue of Zeus, kind of like that glow. Usually they're white.
Yeah.
But white marble, so you can't really see the tan glow.
But imagine tan glowing marble.
If it was colorized marble, if they actually had, if they actually bothered to put in the effort of painting those things, which apparently I guess they never got around to, because you never see painted Greek or Roman sculptures.
You never do.
And I think it's because they're cowards. They're afraid of pigments getting in the pores of their fine marble, which is a great mineral, but you could spice it up a little bit.
Absolutely.
And something that the ancient Egyptians were really great at was spicing up their tombs.
Yeah.
We've
all
all
dead
used
bodies with spices and honeys and such. But yeah, please continue.
I don't know. That's a good point. We'll get back to that later. But
like paprika, pour some of that on a mummy.
Some saffron, stick them in its nose. You got that in the afterlife.
Yeah.
Sweet saffron chuff for just whenever you need it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think they had things figured out.
Yeah, they definitely did.
In fact, why don't we do that while we're still alive? You know, just be sniffing fine spices. That's what we should. I mean, that seems like a good move. There's a Trader Joe's somewhere around here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. All right.
Hey, we're gonna move away from the Trader Joe's talk. And for those people out there who have never heard of mummies to begin with, I'll give you the layman's definition. It's going to be kind of mind-numbingly boring, but I'll hit you with the definition anyways. A mummy is a deceased human or an animal. Of course, we're going to mostly be focusing on humans.
Animal mummies are kind of lame.
Yeah, really lame.
Never cursed. Well, sometimes cursed, but not nearly as often.
Not as cool a curse, really. But yeah, getting back to the
cursed
definition.
To smell bad, like a mummified animal.
Yeah.
I had a mummified squirrel in my attic once.
But
squirrel.
Go on.
Yeah. So we were doing renovations, and we were like, what is this weird baked flat thing?
Yeah.
And it turns out a squirrel had gotten stuck up in the rafters in a corner of the house and just completely dehydrated itself from the heat in the attic. It was gross.
You sure it wasn't a puff pastry of some sort stuck up there?
Or maybe a really dusty pancake?
An extra flaky croissant, maybe?
I'm not sure. I didn't taste it.
Yeah.
And that's going to haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's the real curse, is that you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't know what the mummified squirrel tastes like.
I'm going to get back to this definition. We really got to work our way through this one. So, a deceased human or animal whose skin and organs have been preserved by either intentional or accidental exposure to chemicals, extreme cold, very low humidity, or a lack of air, in such a way that the recovered body does not decay further if kept in cool and dry conditions.
You know, if I didn't know better, that sounds kind of like a superhero origin story.
Yeah?
Extreme cold, chemicals, lack of air.
Yeah.
Maybe some sort of superhero based on space flight.
Yeah.
Or something. Very unfortunate cursed space
or
flight.
based on being mummified, wrapped in linens and covered in spices and honey.
The Mummy Man?
Yeah, Mummy Man. Definitely. I mean, mummies do have supernatural powers. Right. As we're about to get into. When you're out there looking for mummies, you really got to be careful, because if you uncover one, chances are you're going to pick up a curse. Because every mummy, when the person is alive before he's getting mummified, months before his death, he's got all his boys over and they're all working on a curse because that's your legacy.
Right. Yeah. That's what's going to be kicking people in the butt when you no longer can yourself.
Yeah, you and your boys, you're getting together, you're crafting up the gnarliest curse you can imagine. Just the nastiest things. Like you constantly have a stuffy nose, or a toothache that can't be cured.
Always smelling onions, no matter where you go.
Yeah, or your fingernails stop growing.
A popular one, death. That's a big one.
That's also a big one.
Kind of cliche.
Yeah,
honestly,
one of the lamest ones.
What else we got for curses?
Pop-Tarts that have no filling; they're just the bread.
No, every time you buy them.
Yeah, every time.
Oh, that would be the worst.
Yeah, that's the sort of curses we're talking about. And the most common type of mummies that people hear about are usually pharaohs. They have a lot of power. They had a lot of cha-ching. A lot of that cash money back in the day.
A big part of being a powerful mummy is having a fat wallet before you kick the bucket.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can afford the best curse makers.
The best curse makers in town. You get them all together. You pay them a hefty sum. They'll cook up a real nasty curse for you. One of these pharaohs who we're going to get into right now. His name, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Ankatifi, I think.
Where are we looking at in the database here? All right, hold on.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead.
Ankatifi sounds good to me.
Yeah.
That's from the 8th and 10th dynasty of ancient Egypt in the Old Kingdom era.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, the Wikstrom database has, for some reason, tons of mummy knowledge. We didn't actually have to send out many researchers for this one. there was actually a lot of material to go off of already.
Yeah.
That's sort of the opposite of a curse.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been blessed probably by the mummies.
The mummies want us to get the word out.
Yeah. To have more people come discover them and get their curses.
Right. It's just good marketing, really.
Yeah, it really is. It's just smart on the mummy's part. But anyways, Ankatifi, on his tomb, he wrote, "Any ruler shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin. May Heman," which was a deity at the time, one of the gods that the Egyptians worshipped, "not accept any goods he offers, and may his heirs not inherit." So basically...
Wow.
Yeah, those
are some strong words.
It's sort of like, it's an interesting, like, lawyer-type curse, Right. He's not directly going for like, physical damage, He's not saying that someone's going to twist their ankle or anything, which is just a terrible feeling. I'm not going to get into ankle twisting.
We've all been there.
Yeah, mostly me.
Yeah. Lots of twisted ankles. Dan, I would recommend you don't explore any tombs anytime soon.
Yeah, I know. They got crevasses. You can get your ankle stuck in, it's just game over.
Right. And ancient ruins with just bricks all over the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sand everywhere. I hate sand. It gets everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting back to this curse, basically what it means is that the kids of the person who discovers the tomb won't inherit anything from their father, basically saying that the father is going to be poor.
Wow. No inheritance, no land, nothing.
Unlucky, really.
Uh-huh. And not accepting any goods that he's offered to the gods, so he's really getting the curse of bad deal making.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just absolutely poor persuasion. Can't sell himself out of a paper bag if he enters this tomb.
Truly.
And back in the ancient
times, the apprentice
times,
instantly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible way to go.
Yeah, terrible.
Because back then they took that show very seriously, and the punishment for getting kicked off The Apprentice was they would force you to log roll down the side of a pyramid.
Absolutely. Just one of the worst punishments imaginable. It's a lot bumpier than you would imagine.
Right. Apparently back in the day they used to be completely smooth, but because of budget cuts and thousands of years of erosion, they become a little more jagged. But it's kind of cool to think about back in the ancient days, just a pure alabaster white pyramid with golden tips. They usually had gold-plated caps on the top of them, just shining in the sun. You would be able to see that in the desert for miles and miles. But those pyramids are where they would invest the most curses per square foot of burial space.
Big time. Big time. You could get a lot of curses in a relatively small area, really, due to the pyramid shape, which is conducive to curse building.
Right. I mean, it's just absolutely optimal. You got big square base, angled size. You could throw curses in there from any direction, and they'll stick. Stick like glue, like warts on a frog. Or you could say like wraps on a mummy.
Absolutely. So another legendary curse, which I'm sure most of you people who've ever even heard about mummies are familiar with, King Tutankhamun's tomb.
He's famous.
Yeah. He's a legend.
He was on tour in D.C. a few years back, I think back in 2009.
Yeah, he was. Dangerous to bring a mummy on tour, really. Right. A lot of curse spreading.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Especially if you're transporting them by airplane or by ship or by ground transport. Any kind of transporting a mummy.
Or underground transport also.
Yeah, you're just rolling the dice there.
Absolutely.
Because of the strong anti-transport curses. So that's just inherent in the pyramid structure.
Yeah.
Because pyramids do not move very far.
No.
So that's not even something they put on top of the curse production. That's just because they were in a pyramid to begin with. Yeah. And they're trying to... All right, so continue,
absolutely.
Dan.
Yeah, anyways, Tutankhamun, on his tomb, there was the inscription, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king."
Well, I think Elvis had the same thing on his tombstone.
Something like that. They both were kings, both very powerful.
And they both died on the throne.
Yeah. Anyways, this is a famous curse because people actually died from it.
Oh yeah, this was a strong one.
Yeah, Tutankhamun, He skipped all that, take your money stuff, make you constantly itchy type curses, and he went straight to, stumble upon me, you die.
Death by malaria.
Yeah.
Death by piano falling on you when you're moving into an apartment.
Yeah.
These were some pretty... He really went all out, and, full Charlie Chaplin slapstick deaths, some of these. So at least we know King Tut might have had a sense of humor. A little dark, but
yeah,
he was a little bit of a jokester.
He got some goofs.
Right, and since he was actually one of the youngest Egyptian pharaohs, which is part of why he's so famous, I mean, I can see why he would be into practical jokes from beyond the grave.
Yeah, absolutely.
A little mortal practical joke, but, in the right circumstance, looking back on it, we can laugh.
Yeah,
since
we can have a little chuckle.
Right, we haven't done any grave robbing.
No.
So we're kind of in the moral high ground on this one.
Yeah, here at Wickstrom, we're against grave robbing in general, and glaive robbing. If you have a glaive, you shouldn't be robbing people, and you should not be robbing graves either, both of which can cause curses. Anyways, we got a little something for you cats to listen to.
Eggle will be the youngest winner in... Wait a second. Why is he pulling into the pit?
Tom, what the?
Just remembered, it's my 18th birthday. I gotta register with Selective Service. Get me the Wi-Fi laptop.
But...
Look, registration's important to our country and to me. I can't even renew my driver's license most places unless I register.
Tom!
And by the time you're through arguing, I'm already done.
Guys, register with Selective Service online at sss.gov or at the post office.
It's the law.
All right, people, we are back. Just a reminder, this is the Sam and Dan Show.
WXJM Harrisonburg, 88.7 on your FM dial.
Also available to stream on wickstrom.org. Thanks for listening.
We're talking mummies tonight. We were, before we started the PSA, we were talking about Tutankhamun's, his tomb, one of the most legendary of mummy curses.
Right, he's the one who got the ball rolling with this big mummy craze, I would say.
Absolutely. If I had to speculate, which I do have to,
absolutely required on this show.
I would say, Tutankhamun, he was one of the earliest of the Egyptian kings, or I should say pharaohs, to give him his due diligence.
Right, the respect that he's owed as a head of state.
Yeah.
At one point in time.
Yeah. But anyways, he probably, he called all his boys together before he died. He's like, "Hey guys, I'm real spooked, and I don't think the people are gonna remember me because I was a cool pharaoh and all, but my name, Tutankhamun, it's sort of hard to remember."
It's really long. When you're writing that on an Egyptian driver's license, the hieroglyphics go all the way onto the other side.
Yeah, and your hand's going to get tired. No one's going to want to write that. No one's going to want to hear about him. So he's like, "Boys, we got to cook up a curse. It's the only way that people in the future are going to remember me." And so, they come up with the, "Open my tomb, you die" curse. And all the other pharaohs following this, they're so impressed by such a fine curse that he created that they all jumped on the bandwagon. And, they got their boys together and they were creating new curses, fresh curses.
It looks like we got some of those curses lined up in the database for historical record.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go over the first one. So Egyptologist Lord Carnarvon. That's a hard one.
Really hard. Worse than Tutankhamun.
Carnarvon? Yeah, all right. We're going to go with Carnarvon.
Yeah.
All right, so he was the head Egyptologist on this expedition, and him and Howard Carter were the explorers who opened King Tut's tomb, which was actually one of the few unsealed tombs in the Valley of the Pharaohs.
Interesting.
Which is part of why it's so famous, because they tried to erase him from history. But Carnarvon actually died a few months after the discovery from an infected mosquito bite on his cheek. Now, people in the olden times used to die of malaria all the time. And
even today, people still die.
Right. Mosquito diseases, they're real prevalent. But what's really interesting about this one is that King Tut had an autopsy performed on his body. Well, he didn't order the autopsy, but someone else decided
he might have
to do the autopsy.
They found
an
order
Tut
from all the way back in Egyptian times to do the autopsy when he's discovered.
Right. So they did an autopsy on the pharaoh's body, and they found a similar lesion on his cheek as to one that struck down Lord Carnarvon.
Ooh.
So it was possibly an immortal mosquito that was maybe even sealed in the tomb with King Tut.
Absolutely.
And they probably just didn't even realize. I think that's the only logical explanation, because what are the odds that several thousand years apart they would get bitten by a mosquito that has the exact same cheek-causing lesion disease?
I say absolutely none. There's only one explanation. It's the fact that the mosquito was in there with King Tut holding his curse, which, of course, was the poke your cheek and die curse.
Right. And even if we're not accounting for the unexplained, I think this could be easily explained if the mosquito was not immortal. It was perhaps just a regular mosquito that died in the tomb, and when they removed the slab covering the tomb entrance, the mosquito fell and struck Lord Carnarvon on his cheek as it fell and pierced his skin, giving him the disease.
Definitely a possibility.
I think that's pretty high likelihood.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the mosquito, so I can't confirm or deny that, but it's definitely a big possibility. More than likely, I would say. More than likely.
Mm-hmm. So the second instance of King Tut's curse is actually really interesting as well. Dan, would you mind covering that for us?
Okay, so the second death we're going to talk about, Howard Carter. He of course, as we mentioned earlier, he was Lord Carnarvon's partner when they found King Tut's tomb.
Mm-hmm. The second man to enter the tomb.
Yeah. And anyways, Howard Carter, he took a mummified hand from the tube with a bracelet, or from the tube, the tomb.
Right, he wasn't on the subway.
Yeah.
But I've seen a couple mummified hands on the subway, if you know what I mean.
Anyways, he took the mummified hand from the tomb. Of course, this wasn't King Tut's mummified hand. It's probably just some servant King Tut got buried with. He had an extra hand laying around.
They used to do that in the olden days.
Yeah, they always,
bury
everyone
you
had
with
hands.
your servants and family and your pets.
Yeah. So naturally, Howard Carter, he's got this hand. He uses it as a paperweight. And, he starts to get bored because, it's a big paperweight. Having an entire human hand, really just overkill in the paperweight section. So he decides to give it away to his friend.
That's one way to keep a hold on your papers.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, Howard, he passes his hand on to his boy, whose name's Ingham. Ingham? I think Ingham's probably correct.
Sir Bruce Ingham, I believe.
Yeah, Sir Bruce Ingham. Anyways, he gives this hand to Ingham, and Ingham, he brings it inside. He's excited to use his new paperweight. He plops it down on top of his papers that he's working on, and boom, the house can bust just like that. The house just catches on fire.
Spontaneously conflagrates itself.
Yeah. Just the mummy flames from the past just envelop the home. Ingham was fine, but the mummy hand was destroyed, and so was the home. So, King Tut, he might not have wanted death for everybody. Maybe he's just trying to teach a couple people lessons, or maybe...
Right, maybe he was just sending a message. You could use a hand remodeling your home.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Also, it's possible that, like I said, the hand probably belonged to a servant of some kind, and he can't afford top quality curses. So he had to go with the classic house burn. Not a bad curse.
That's a good one.
Not as cool as King Tut's mosquito from downtown.
Right.
Your dead curse.
But what I think gives this an ironic twist, after the house burned down, Sir Ingham was a pretty wealthy guy. He was able to rebuild it.
Dumb wealthy.
But, the kind of people who have mummy hands as paperweights, they're usually kind of got a little extra cash to spend.
Absolutely.
But after he rebuilt his home, instead of being burned down, it was actually destroyed by a flood. So he got hit by the yin and the yang of the mummy curse department. Huge inferno and absolutely massive oversaturation of timbers. It just, the powerful force of water. It's not something to mess with. So 2 houses destroyed, 1 paperweight. It doesn't say what happened to the hand after that, but I would chalk that up to definite mummy curse.
Yeah, it's been charred, it's been waterlogged. I'd say that hand's out of there, and I say good riddance, really, because, that's some gnarly curses that come along with the hand. Really not worth it, even though I'm sure it was a great paperweight.
Right. I bet that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
I would go with that if it weren't someone's actual hand.
If it was a fake mummy hand, I think I would be down.
Right, that'd be kind of sweet.
Yeah, real one, probably start to smell, obviously, unless you're keeping it in a freezer at all times.
Right. I'm not sure what that means. A paperweight constructed with a hand.
Yeah, I don't... Maybe
it was encased in amber.
He glued a paperweight to the hand?
Maybe. It's possible.
It's definitely possible.
All right. But talking about things in the realm of possibility, Dan, I think that breaks the ice.
Yeah.
For our next mummy curse story, which is actually the sinking of the Titanic.
Yes, yeah. What's interesting about this, a lot of people, they say that the ship sunk because it hit an iceberg, which, it did hit an iceberg, but that's not why the ship sunk.
It's not?
No, the ship sunk because of a classic mummy curse. They hit the iceberg and they upset. I should give you guys some background before I start getting into theories. Anyways, on the Titanic, they didn't have an entire mummy per se, but they had what was called a mummy board, which was of an unidentified
Is that like a boogie
woman.
Board?
Yeah, similar actually. It's a large plank of wood that was taken from a tomb that it was put over the mummy of a woman, and they took the board. I don't know why they wouldn't take the mummy, but they took the board probably as a souvenir, probably hoping they wouldn't pick up any curses. Really.
Right. That's kind of smart. If you leave the actual mummy, but take the painting of the mummy, it's almost like the next best thing, and much smaller chance of getting cursed. So you would think.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. So what happened next?
The mummy board. How did it end up on the Titanic? Allow me to explain. So
I'm all ears.
The mummy board, it was taken to a museum for a while, but people kept complaining because they kept hearing banging coming from it. Like someone knocking on wood. And also the museum curator, or not curator, but the guard who was tasked with overlooking it, died of suspicious circumstances.
Interesting.
So, the museum, they have guards dying. They have weird knocking noises. People, they don't want to come see that. They want to come see a board that's painted to look like a dead woman.
Right. Man, that is kind of crazy. I would definitely not want to be hanging out in a museum with a mummy board making suspicious knocking noises.
It's more than a coincidence, really.
I would say.
It's truly terrifying.
Got to be a curse.
Absolutely.
Definitely cursed object.
They should have known that beforehand. And that's why I got to say it's this guy's bad that the Titanic sank. But there was an American archaeologist, he heard that the museum, they're trying to get rid of the mummy board because, it's killing guards, it's freaking people out. Little kids are dropping their candies.
Right. Just typical mummy stuff.
Yeah, just spooking the people.
Just giving off a bad vibes.
Yeah. Bad mummy vibes. And anyway, so he's like, yeah, I'll take that off your hands. So he gets it. And, again, this is an archaeologist who's willing to go to a museum and buy a mummy board, so he's probably really lonely. So he took that as his partner onto the Titanic.
Ooh, bad move.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe good move, because wood does float.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And
maybe he was a little ahead of his time.
He might have been. Maybe he knew that the curse is real and that it would sink the ship. And he also knew his arch enemy was going to be on the ship. David from high school who used to bully him.
Oh, I hate that guy.
So he brings the mummy board aboard the ship. Okay? And this
intentional mummy-based curse sabotage on the maiden voyage.
Yeah.
I bet he was trying to use that mummy board to surf the wave from the resulting sinking way back to the start point of the trip, but he probably underestimated how far he was going to be from the shore.
Yeah, and how cursed the mummy board was. He's probably,
cursed.
He probably didn't want to sink the whole ship. He just wanted to give people a good scare. Teach old Dave a lesson.
Right, maybe some like seasickness or like a little rocking around.
Yeah, no, or make him stub his toe a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
But what actually happened was the Titanic sunk.
And the rest of that's history.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to go into any more depth of the Titanic sinking. But, that does
it's
remind me.
It's already plenty in depth, if you know what I mean.
Right. All this talk about rocking the board and knocking beats, it reminds me of a good old goof that I thought of once.
Okay.
So what kind of music do mummies like the most?
What?
Rap music.
We're sorry for that.
I thought that was a pretty good one.
Yeah, Sam found that in the database.
That was in the database, folks.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what's in here, it's the good stuff.
It was inscribed in some tomb. But anyways, we got some...
Speaking of inscriptions and tombs, we got some promos for you. Some banging beats of our own.
Yeah.
So Saturday, February 29th, we have at the Lon, we've got Human Host, Static Collector, Star Coast, and Star Talker. That's going to be at 9:30 p.m. Saturday, February 29th at Lon. And so that's some indie music. If you feel like visiting that sort of venue, that's an option if you're looking for stuff to do.
Mm-hmm. Also, Saturday, 10 p.m. at Ditto House, Shred Flintstone, Venus Milo, Wine Teeth, and Edgar Allan Poe Boy. They're all playing there. Again, that's 10 p.m. Ditto House. If that seems like your scene, that's an option for Saturday. And Friday also, at Easy Greasy, Marbleberry Seeds, Julia Cottrell, and Mibble are all playing. So that's another option if you're looking for things to do this weekend.
Wow. I'm really impressed by the ability of independent musicians to come up with original names.
Absolutely. It seems like they'll never run out because they're just cranking them out left and right. There's so many.
An infinite supply of good names, good puns. It's good stuff.
There has to be some sort of indie name generator out there floating around. When we start a band, we'll take a look.
Right. There is actually one in the database. It's called The Human Mind. So, actually, that's the name of the band that created the indie name generator.
Mm-hmm. Which is called Indie Name Generator.
Right. Exactly. All right. So, wrapping that up.
Yeah.
back to the the subject at hand.
Mm-hmm.
For those unaware, this is 88.7 FM WXJM Harrisonburg.
Sam and Dan show.
Every Wednesday.
6 to 7.
Every Wednesday. So we're talking about mummies this week, and we just talked about the theory that King Tut's curse was very powerful. Actually, that's not a theory.
That's
proven.
A fact. Yeah, that's a
proven fact that King Tut's curse was very powerful.
And even his servants' curse is very gnarly.
Mm-hmm. And moving further, the postulation that a mummy might have sunk the Titanic, which I have no trouble believing, because mummies are known for being found in desert, and the Titanic was near the North Pole.
Okay.
And those, I would just say, based on location, those areas would be, in conflict with each other. So I can kind of see why that would happen. Moving on. The final myth.
Yeah.
Well, the third. The third alleged incident, not a myth, folks. These are alleged happenings and suspicious circumstance that we think really points to a possibility that maybe there's a chance that it's almost likely that someone might believe that mummy curses are real and they're out there.
And what he's saying right there is the truth.
And that's nothing but possibly a certified fact, maybe.
Yeah, unverified.
Allegedly.
But I got to say, a lot of these curse-related things, they happened a little bit before our time, before we had the staff that we do. So it's hard to send our own people in to do this own research. We're working off other people's research, which, of course, not as reliable as our own, but still very reliable. We have a lot of contacts in the archaeology scene. A lot of mummy experts on tap, waiting to share their knowledge.
Mm-hmm. We actually had some arrangements to get an Egyptian mummy expert into the studio
Real live
today.
Egyptian, not even mummified.
Right. Real facts. But unfortunately, he was unable to make it because he's actually an engineer. So, Martin, if you're listening to this, we wish we could have had you in the studio today.
Would have been a real pleasure.
But we're making our way without you. But we do miss you, and we wish you could have made
along, baby.
So, all right. So, third mummy myth. All right. So, this one's actually from the 1970s. So, if you notice, these are actually getting more and more recent because these are not starting with 18s or 17s back when stealing mummies and grave robbing was cool.
Yeah. Now it's not. It's not as cool.
Right. This is real modern medicine, YouTube, Facebook sort of time period. Well, not quite, but almost. We're getting there. So during an excavation in Saqqara, which is in Egypt, Walter Bryan Emery found a small statue of the Egyptian god of death, Osiris.
Okay.
I think that's how you pronounce it. You know, a lot of these Egyptian names, they got kind of like silent vowels and consonants in there.
Yeah.
But like scarab,
Scarab.
no one actually knows how to pronounce that.
No one does.
It's not a real word.
No.
That's because I think what they did when they found the Rosetta Stone is they just saw a picture of a beetle and were like, I don't know what this is called.
Some guy said, Scarab.
I think someone was coughing in the back.
Scarab.
Right.
Yeah. And
so
they just rolled with it.
Yeah. So this guy, Walter Bryan Emery, found the Egyptian god of death. And, it looks like we're getting a call right now.
Yeah,
Dan,
I can take this story.
All right. You got it from here?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to answer this call, listeners.
Yeah. Anyways, as Sam was saying, Bryan Emery, he found this statue in Saqqara, and he took it home with him, which, again, when you're researching mummies and anything Egypt-related, really, you don't want to be taking mummy-related things with you. So anyways, he takes the statue with him home, and, he goes to the bathroom, as everybody has to, and his assistant hears him screaming in absolute terror, and he ran into the bathroom to find Emery clutching the sink, experiencing some sort of trauma.
Some vigorous mummy activity.
Yeah. It seemed as though he was being dragged by his shoulder, but there was nobody there. He got dragged around the room and eventually
pulled to the ground.
Sort of like
paralyzed.
A poltergeist type thing, but again, mummies different from poltergeist. Anyways, his assistant was able to rescue him eventually, and the man ended up being paralyzed, Bryan Emery, and dying. So
right, the next day.
Get cursed.
So that sounds like a pretty rough curse to me.
Yeah.
Very, very similar to perhaps a stroke, but maybe back in the day, that's just how curses used to manifest.
It could have just been a classic stroke curse.
Right. I mean, that you could say it's a stroke of bad luck, also known as a curse.
Yeah.
All right. So, listeners, our caller, he had a pretty good question, I think, and this has got my gears grinding a little bit. You know, the old noodle
gears are turning.
The noodle's getting cooked.
Al dente.
He was wondering if perhaps the reason our Egyptologist on staff, Martin, wasn't able to make it today was because of a mummy curse.
Ooh. That's definitely a possibility. Now,
I think that's the kind of question that we would only be able to answer if Martin were here right now.
Martin, if you're out there listening and you do have a mummy curse, please call in. We can help you.
Right. Give us a call for sure. We've got a second Egyptologist on staff now because you couldn't make it. So he'll do what he can to lift that curse from you. And that number is 540-JMU-DIAL. Again, 540-JMU-DIAL. If any of our listeners have been affected by a mummy curse, we want to hear from you too.
Yeah.
Call in. Let us know what you're suffering from, what mummy you disturbed, or potential mummy.
Yeah.
Or maybe you even think about possibly having disturbed. You know, I mean, just tell us your ailments. and we'll help you out with a little bit of positive energy, good vibes, and lift cursing. Or curse lifting.
And going off of that, I have to say, we've been talking about mummies, and naturally, of course, we're focusing on Egyptian mummies, but there are mummies all over the world, folks. There's mummies in China, South America, Egypt, really everywhere. Everywhere there's been people, there's been mummies.
That's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Humans are as inseparable from mummification as warts from a toad. Know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah.
They just go hand in hand.
Like stink on a skunk, people.
Exactly. And speaking of sticking to things, another joke at the database. So what kind of underwear did they find on King Tut?
What?
Fruit of the tomb.
That's we don't know who exactly researched that joke, but it's truly incredible.
I think that's quality stuff. And, it really speaks to the quality of Egyptian undergarments that they were able to read that from his waistband.
Absolutely.
After all this time.
Truly.
We got another call coming in. I'm going to take this real quick.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, like I was saying about mummies all over the world, specifically South American mummies, there was a big burial of mummies found.
Bad news, Dan. I just answered that phone call.
Yeah.
The line was dead.
Dun, dun, dun.
That, not a good sign. I think we're being targeted by the mummies.
They're hitting us with blank phone calls to try to kill our airtime. It won't work. We'll kill our airtime by ourselves.
We can't be silenced by any mummies. All right, another call coming in.
Curse
I'll see. Let's
inbound.
go with this one.
Anyways, before we were hit with that mummy prank call, the original mummies were the Chinchorro mummies of South America. Of course, I'm talking about the early Chinchorro culture of northern Chile, which is the earliest mummies ever found. The Egyptian mummies we're talking about, that we're talking 3000 BC.
Okay. All right.
But these mummies, the Chinchorros, they're anywhere from 7,000 to 5,000 BC. Really, the oldest mummies in town, in the world, really. But what did that caller have to say?
All right, so one of our dedicated listeners, again, shout out to our listeners. You guys are what makes this show what it is. There's a reason we are the most popular show on WXJM.
In the Valley.
With the most calls, the most listeners, the best fan base. And it's because of you guys.
On Wednesday, 6 to 7, please.
Right. So I just had a caller call in. He's been cursed. He can only ingest chicken nuggets. And I think he said it was caused by the curse of King Cluck. And I just think that's a tragedy.
Oh, man.
So look out. Don't disrespect any mummified animals, because you can really get struck down there.
Yeah, we've been sleeping on mummified animals this whole time, but as you clearly can hear, they can be just as dangerous as human mummies.
Right, if not even more so.
Yeah, imagine the cholesterol on that poor boy.
All right, I've got another call coming in, so I'm going to take this.
A lot of mummy reports coming in tonight, folks. More people than we would imagine are being affected by mummies. And that's probably because they're so pervasive throughout the world, in culture. Mummies are everywhere.
Let us know.
And I got to say, we mention this every week, but integrated phone calls, it's something Sam and I both dream of here on the Sam and Dan Show. We hope one day it'll be a reality. Because I know you listeners out there, you guys want to hear these calls. You want to know what the people are saying. We'll try our best to relay the information to you as accurately as possible.
Right. Well,
but we can't do real due diligence to the callers.
All right. Thanks for calling.
But it looks like Sam's finishing up right now.
Cheers, mate.
What do we got, Sam?
All right, so we just had a caller call in. International call.
Oh.
I wasn't able to trace it exactly, but boop, 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 boop. Wickstrom database indicates something from the United Kingdom. So,
okay.
Another one of our international fans calling in.
Yeah, mate.
Right, fish and chips, mate. But he just wanted to say he's had a rough time growing up because of his mummy constantly cursing at him. Yeah, he says he wakes
mummy.
up. So, mummy always cursing. And, our heart goes out to you.
Yeah. Again, another example of the power mummies have.
Right.
Especially during the young developmental stages of the child. You don't want to be cursing at him the whole time. He's going to grow up and have a rough time.
Right. Some mummies, they just, I don't know, can't contain themselves and just go overboard.
Yeah.
So, thanks for calling that in. All right. So, where were we, Dan? Were we talking about South American mummies? Chinese mummies?
Yeah, we were talking about South American mummies.
Okay.
I mentioned the Chinchorro mummies, oldest mummies, ranging anywhere from 7,000 to 5,000 BC.
Those are some old mummies.
Yeah, found in northern Chile and also the Atacama Desert. And
Atacama? What about a semicolon? All right,
nice.
Man, we're on fire tonight,
Yeah,
folks.
wow.
This is great. Speaking of being on fire, we've got the weather.
Yeah, what up? This is Dan with the weather, folks. Right now, it's 54 and cloudy here in the Berg. It's going to be cooling down tonight, somewhere around the mid-40s. Tomorrow, starting at 1 a.m., we got chances of rain all day. Granted, they're not 100%, but they range from about 30% at 1 a.m. all the way up to about 80% around 7 or 8 a.m. If you're walking to school or biking, be careful out there because it's going to be wet probably. Also, if you're driving too. Really, if you're going to school or if you're going anywhere.
Any kind of movement whatsoever.
Yeah.
With or without a mummy curse on you.
Mm-hmm.
But especially so if you are transporting a mummy, as we discussed earlier.
And if you're the man who's who's been cursed by King Cluck.
King Cluck.
On your way to McDonald's, pick up that 20-piece McNug. Stay safe out there, okay? It's going to be a dangerous day.
You got to do what you got to do. Okay, so, South American mummies are quite interesting. Because, you really just, mostly mummies are associated with ancient Egypt because it's one of the most popular mummy spots.
Yeah,
It's a mummy hotspot.
If you're going somewhere to discover mummies, that's really the place.
But America does have its fair share. A lot of the ancient South Americans practiced several different mummification techniques, which are all pretty interesting. So there's natural mummification, and, that's just kind of, you just kind of leave a body where it is and let nature do its thing.
Yeah, just let it mummify.
So usually, in that situation, not a lot of curses going on because completely au naturel process, you know, vegan, all natural,
organic, locally
non-GMO,
sourced.
Just plain mummies.
Yeah.
And, those are some of the good ones. And
good friendly mummies.
Right.
If you uncover them, you could probably take a hand as a paperweight. You'll probably be fine.
Right.
In fact, they'd probably encourage it.
Very low curse probably. And South Americans are, famous for their kindness and not making curses on their tombs.
That's more of an Egyptian thing. They were,
Right. It's sort of their shtick.
Yeah.
There are also different techniques of mummification, such as the red mummy technique and the black mummy technique. And those are both named for the coating that they applied to the mummies. And it seems to me, based on the burial patterns of the black mummies and the red mummies, they've found them in a large grid pattern. And it appears that over time they were trying to bury more mummies in such a way as to play out a multi-generational game of checkers.
A good use for your mummies, really. You got all these mummies backed up. The kids are getting bored. They got nothing new to play with. Why don't you make a chessboard out of them?
Right.
Why not?
It just works.
It just makes sense.
So, yeah, a little bit of fun you can have with your mummies if you got some kicking around.
And if you make sure they're really not cursed, go ahead, have some fun with the mummies.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these mummies, there's a black mummy technique, the red mummy technique. You got two sides right there. You got red team versus black team.
Who can mummify their relative faster?
Yeah, and the best.
Right.
You come back in a few thousand years, whoever's relative is biodegraded the most is the loser, and they suck. And they're terrible at mummifying things.
Right. The winner is announced 1,000 years down the line. So,
yeah, and they get a coupon to Subway.
That's just how it worked.
Big reward.
So another place that, interesting fact, place that mummies come from, which you might not expect, is actually Chinese mummies. So what's interesting about the Chinese mummies is, if our listeners haven't looked at a map of China lately, the huge upper left area, just in general, about the size of Texas, is a gigantic desert. Do you know how to pronounce this? Xijing Desert?
Jiaxing.
That sounds good. Yeah, huge desert.
Xijing.
Giant.
Yeah.
And that's actually where they find a lot of natural mummies. And, like the South American mummies, not very cursed. But what's interesting is how they're found. Dan, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and interesting about these mummies, again, as Sam said, these mummies are in the middle of a desert, and they were found in overturned boats, which is really interesting. I guess if you aren't going to build a pyramid, a boat is a good place to put a mummy if you flip it over, because it's pretty much a tomb. I guess it's the lazy man's tomb.
It's sort of like a small pyramid that's been stretched out a little bit, if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's the next best thing,
if
really.
If you squint really hard from far away, yeah, it could look sort of like a pyramid. Why not?
So, yeah, it's just kind of interesting that they found these mummies, a complete settlement of them, buried in the middle of a desert in boats, and deserts are known, for those who aren't aware, deserts are known for their severe lack of water. So the question is, why, in this completely rainless area of the world, are they using boats? Now, I've seen some storms where you could almost use a boat to get downstream.
Yeah.
But that's not happening. So why the boats?
And another thing to add to this, an interesting fact about the actual mummies is that they have very European features. They got brown hair, long noses.
Super long noses.
Really long.
We're talking rhesus monkey length.
Yeah, we're talking hook-nosed European boys. But anyways, what were these European people doing in the desert of China in boats?
Right. It just doesn't make sense.
It just doesn't add up unless in that time China was underwater, and then all of a sudden,
part of Europe.
Yeah, and part of Europe. It's possible that China was on attached to Europe, on the lower part. And it's sort of, eventually over time, there's a big earthquake. It got knocked off. And it just sort of floated around the Horn of Africa and just sort of, fell into its spot in Asia.
That makes sense to me. I'm on board with you on that.
Yeah,
Dan.
definitely.
It's just,
definitely
if you look at the map, it's just like how it works.
Of course.
Actually, real quick, this talk of rain reminded me of one of our longtime listeners. My buddy Rain from Computer Science, shout out.
Shout out to Rain.
But thanks for listening. We support all our listeners, especially ones that ask for shouts outs on the show. But moving on, another set of mummies that was found in the same desert region of China, they're known as the Churchin mummies. So, going against most typical, Asian stereotypes, these guys were actually Scottish. And 6'6".
Woo!
So these were some tall boys out in the middle of the desert. And what's interesting is they found an entire family completely mummified, extremely intact. In fact, there's pictures here in the database. You can make out their individual facial features and count the hairs on their eyebrows. This is insane.
Wow.
And so even better mummified than those in Egypt. And it's just highly suspicious, because how does an entire Celtic family 3,000 years ago from right now end up thousands and thousands of miles east of any known Celtic settlements in France and mainland Europe? And I think the only explanation for that is they tried using Apple Maps and absolutely got very lost along the way.
Yeah.
And accidentally mummified themselves in the desert.
Yeah.
Because they got too thirsty.
The father, everyone's heading east. They're like, can we please stop and ask for directions? But he refuses. He's 6'4". He's a big boy. He's proud. Right. He's not going to stop and ask people for directions. He's going to keep heading east until eventually he wraps around the entire world and gets back to where he wants to be.
He says, Silk Road, we're making our own road.
Anyways, yeah, he walks along this road for a while, and eventually they get mummified. I don't know, a sandstorm hits. They all fall asleep. They wake up, boom, they're mummified, just like that. And they're mummies for the rest of their life and death.
And that, yeah, I guess, can you be a mummy for the rest of your life? I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know. Can't confirm or deny.
So perhaps it was, just given these super suspicious circumstances, do you think it could have been foul play by more famous mummies? Perhaps even more ancient mummies cursed these other mummies to be lost in the middle of the desert to preserve their own street cred. Was this some kind of ancient prank gone wrong?
It's definitely a possibility. If there's one thing I know about mummies, it's that if you're gonna go ahead and get mummified, you're a proud man
and tricky prankster.
Yeah, and definitely a big goofster. And the last thing you want is someone upstaging you after you've already been mummified. So let's say this large man he stumbled upon the tomb of a mummy, and the mummy, the man, of course, he starts mocking the mummy. Nice bandages and such. And the mummy, in anger, curses him and his family. Might as well, if you're cursing the guy, might as well take out the whole family because bad seed.
But right. The mummy fruit doesn't fall far from the mummy tree.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyways, he curses the man to go walk in the desert for the rest of his life. And then the man, to get revenge, he decides, you know what? I'll teach this mummy. I'll turn into a mummy myself. My whole family will turn into mummy. That's how easy it is.
More perfectly preserved mummy.
And
just to prove a point.
Yeah, and he did prove a point. And I got to say, he wins this one.
That's dedication. I think the only mummy curse that we're going to be seeing from those guys is the curse of shame on the mummies that decompose further than they did.
Yeah, those mummies who were hating on him earlier, now they're really feeling the heat, They've been got.
Look who's laughing.
Yeah, him and his whole family.
Exactly.
Perpetually, because they're mummified with big laughs on their face.
Right. It's a horrible side effect of mummification.
Yeah, truly terrifying, Anyways,
But moving back to lighter topics, Dan, I see in the database you've got some pretty reputable sources brought up on mummies in popular culture. So for our last couple minutes, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I figured, we're talking about mummies. A lot of you guys, you remember a lot of mummy-related things from your childhood. And I'm going to dive into one of the biggest influencers in the way in which people see mummies nowadays. And that, of course, episode 122 of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Scooby-Doo and a Mummy 2. That's the name of it.
I remember that exact episode.
Yeah. And this is it's the classic formula. The gang, they show up at this museum, and the curator of the museum, for some reason, just wants no one to come to the museum.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he just wants to spook everybody.
Maybe he was doing renovations and wasn't ready to open.
Yeah. He was working on the bathrooms, and people kept complaining, like, hey, man, when are you going to have the bathrooms up? And he's like, you know what? If you guys can't wait a little longer, then you might as well not show up. So, anyways, the doctor...
Pretty straightforward.
Dr. Najib, I'll describe him to you. He had a black mustache, black hair. He was wearing a fez the entire time. About as Egyptian as Scooby-Doo gets, really.
Right. From the understandings of Hanna-Barbera back in the day.
That was Egyptian in the eyes of Hanna-Barbera.
That's the go-to Egyptian look.
Yeah. Slap a fez on anything, Hanna-Barbera's happy. They're calling that Egyptian. Anyways, so again, Dr. Najib, he's trying to scare everybody away from this museum. He pops on a mummy outfit, really convincing mummy. Although I gotta say, He oversold it a little bit with the bandages. Most mummies that you'll see, they really aren't as bandaged as you would imagine. It's mostly about the spices rubbed on the skin, not so much the paper you wrap around yourself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I've been stuck in duct tape a couple times, and I'm not a mummy yet.
Yeah, he's not.
So completely encased in it.
Yeah.
So I would have to say I didn't apply any spices at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I
maybe next time, pop some cumin on that duct tape, wrap yourself in it. You know, that could be funny.
And we'll see. The human beef jerky trick. A great Halloween costume, too.
Definitely. Write that down.
That's actually something that's really contributed to our culture is mummies as a costume. Because, everyone can identify with a mummy.
Yeah.
And it's one of the easiest things to make. All you need is one roll of toilet paper and some tape.
And to be human-shaped.
Right.
That's it.
Only vaguely, even. You can be pretty lumpy. And, there's mummies of all shapes and sizes out there.
Absolutely.
But, listeners, it looks like we're coming to an end of
We're running
our
out
show.
of time, folks.
So, just a reminder, this is WXJM Harrisonburg, 88.7 on your FM dial.
Sam and Dan show every 6 to 7. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We do this for you.
Mm-hmm. And our show really would be nothing without the fans. So, remember, follow us on SoundCloud. SoundCloud, Sam and Dan show. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Hard to forget.
Not many Sam and Dan shows on there, so if you
I
find
checked.
one, it's probably us.
It's the only one. And the only one we're listening to.
Yeah, really.
But, Dan, this brings me, the time is now 7 o'clock. This brings me to the last thing I wanted to say.
Let's hear it.
What did the Mummy director say when they finished shooting?
What?
That's a wrap.
All
right, folks. Good night.
Food for thought. Take care of yourselves, kids.
Have a great spring break, JMU.
Peace out.